The process of designing for sustainability begins with a rethinking of the relationship between the built environment and the natural world. Restoring a sense of balance between the two lies at the core of thinking green and building smart. Scott Kelly is an architect and partner in Revision Architecture, one of the nation's leading architectural firms dedicated to sustainable design and building principles.
There's wind December, January, February, when there's the least amount of solar energy available for those PV panels.
I would describe the mission of Revision Architecture as rethinking the balance between the built environment and the natural environment, and finding ways for us to work with it rather than against it. Some of our work is renovation work, some of our work is new construction work. The renovation work really plays very well into our mission for a couple reasons. First of all, let's say on average 1/3 of the embodied energy in any project is in the materials. And if we are reusing those materials, then our environmental impact is much, much, much less. Second, renovation projects tend to be in urban infrastructure or in existing infrastructure. And that also means that new infrastructure does not have to be created. And that plays very well into our mission too. Well, the range of our work is really broad in the sense that sometimes we'll do very small residential additions, renovations, and sometimes we'll do 1 million square foot commercial or industrial building. And the great thing about this is, first, we only do, since our inception, we've only done projects that are green and sustainable. And when we work on a residential project, we learn great things about function and efficiency, and we bring them into the commercial parts. When we're looking at a commercial project, we may learn a tremendous amount about rainwater harvesting off the roof to flush toilets, and then we'll simplify that system and bring it into the residential work. So each type of work really brings a lot of knowledge to the other type of work. Our firm's design process really can be categorized into 3 different major areas. First, we always use integrated systems thinking when it comes to design. And what I mean by that is we realize that there's a correlation between the color of the paint on the wall and the size of the HVAC system. And really where that correlation is in the lighting. The lighter the surface is, the more reflective the surface is, the less lighting we need, the smaller the HVAC system. So that's integrated systems. Second thing is integrated teams. And what we mean by that is our society has become so specialized that we've got many different disciplines sitting in different locations. And we really like to integrate that thinking together and use what we'd call a master builder approach. If you think about it, 100 years ago, one entity, one person was your structural engineer, your mechanical engineer, your architect, your builder. They were all integrated together. And we've gotten away from that. So we want to use that collective knowledge and bring it back, and that's an integrated team. Yeah, one of the strategies I think this client wants to really look at is providing plug-in hybrid or electric-only vehicles. And then the third part of it is really the green design charrette. And that green design charrette is the tool that the integrated team uses to talk about integrated systems that are appropriate for a specific project.
If we're having a greenhouse up there, it might be really cool to irrigate.
Mm-hmm. And those 3 parts are really make the aggregate.
The true test of thinking green and building smart lies in the execution of the architect's plan. At Scott Kelly's invitation, I met him at a client site in rural Pennsylvania. What were the client's goals with the construction here?
This client really had a strong mandate that we had to design a home that was green and sustainable, zero energy, but we had to do it for a market rate. We couldn't spend a whole lot of extra money on the design.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. Is green design and building reserved for those who can afford to go through the architectural process and design a custom home, or is it available to the masses?
The answer to that really is it depends. Sure, green building is completely appropriate for a custom home situation like here, whether you have an architect involved or not, but there's also a huge part of the market in the renovation of existing buildings and great potential there to make those more green and sustainable. So it's appropriate everywhere, just different techniques are used for each different strategy.
Well, I'm really interested to see what you've created here. Can we take a look?
Yeah, let's go inside.
Okay. It's warm and cozy in here.
Yeah, it's nice and comfortable.
What are some of the ways that this house exemplifies your firm's thinking and philosophy?
Well, I think philosophically, when we approach a project like this, we always try to look at integrated systems. And what I mean by these integrated systems, I mean the amount of solar radiation and daylight that may come through a window balanced with the amount of concrete mass or thermal mass we have on the floor. And finding the balance between the energy efficiency of the mechanical systems and the amount of thermal performance of the envelope. Because the better the envelope, the smaller the mechanical system needs to be.
Well, what special challenges are there, if any, when designing from a green perspective?
I think there's really three major challenges. First, on the design end, we really have to not make assumptions. We actually need to test, use modeling, use other techniques to test what the end result might be, not just make what we typically do, an assumption that something is going to work. Second part of it is really getting in there early to work with these code officials. We need to go and explain why our techniques that we're using or why the systems that we're proposing are better or meet or usually exceed code. And then the third part of that is working with the contractor. Getting out there, sometimes often in the field, helping them understand the difference in installation techniques or why some of the methods that we're proposing may be much better and much safer for them.
I imagine with your focus on sustainability that the conversations you have with your clients are different than that of a traditional architect. What are some of the specific questions that you ask your clients early on?
Well, we do ask them a series of questions that usually starts with focusing on what their green and sustainable goals are. And we'll ask them questions of whether they care more about energy efficiency or cost, or if they care more about toxicity of building materials or the lack thereof in our buildings, or even if it's about social equity issues. And by understanding what their key goals are around sustainability, we're able to then deliver a project that meets their needs.
Is the demand for sustainable building and design growing, or is it just a small part of the market?
I'd say it's actually growing considerably. But if you really think about this, we've been doing green and sustainable stuff for many, many years, generations and generations. For the last 50 years, we forgot about it. Now, culturally, we're finally getting back to those principles.
What words would you have for people who are planning careers in design or construction as it relates to sustainability?
Well, I think one of the greatest things is, man, it's really great to wake up in the morning and want to go to work, to feel like what you're doing is really making a difference. The second part of that really is what's happening is now inevitable. We've started this beautiful change and it's changing very, very quickly. So I'm happy to say that green's not a fad. It's simply the way that we're going to be doing business moving forward. And I think the third part about that is a bunch of us have really pushed the envelope over the last 10 years in green and sustainable, and we've only been able to push it so far. The good news in that is now it's time for the next generation to come along and push it 10 times further. We've set the opportunity for them to do it. Now it's their job to follow through.